Hello. I'm Alex. I work at HubSpot right now, doing freemium user acquisition. Before that, I worked at Conversion Excel, where I learned a ton about conversion rate optimization and A/B testing, as you might imagine. And before that, I was at a startup, really early stage, really high growth. But through this whole career, I've done a lot of experimentation, a lot of educating about experimentation, and a lot of CRO. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. Particularly what I've learned about the organizational aspects about CRO, so where that should fit into the company and how it should operate within a large company, but also a small company, and what I think the role of CRO really is. The hint from this title would be that it's an operating system and not a tactic. So I'm going to explain what that means exactly and what it means for your business, and get into some tactical ways that you might actually implement that. So first off, we can rant a little bit, as one does. So the question, what is conversion rate optimization, is relatively, well, it should be straightforward, but it's not. When you search for things like that, you get a variety of answers. And when you search for things like conversion rate optimization tips, tactics, best practices, all of those things, you get a flurry of different responses. So this would be conversion rate optimization tips, of which there are hundreds, maybe thousands, it seems. Conversion rate optimization tactics, there's even more, and they're different posts. So what are these tactics? These tactics are things like use high quality images and video on your product pages, which is good advice, definitely. I think high quality is subjective, and how much high quality matters from one page to another, and one site to another, and one company to another, and one industry to another probably varies. So it's somewhat nuanced, but it's good advice, right? It's a tactic. It's something you can do to try to increase your conversion rates. Same thing with stuff like offer free shipping. I think customers probably like free shipping. It's probably expected, but it's nuanced. It's one of those things where it's like you can't just offer free shipping. You have to think about how that cuts into your margins. How can you make that work at scale? What's the marginal value for your customer experience of offering free shipping? These are things that are a little bit nuanced. It's not like you can just run down this list of 33 tactics and implement them all and watch your conversion rate increase. It's a little more complicated. And then even when you search something more like what you would think would be a little bit more strategic, conversion rate optimization strategies, you get stuff like influence and persuade users using social proof and FOMO. FOMO is fear of missing out. So, there's only one left. Purchase now. First off, this is a tactic. It's not a strategy. Second off, there's still a lot of nuance in this. What if your market doesn't like this kind of a tactic? What if it's actually repelled by this? This could decrease the conversion rate. It could do nothing. A tip, after all, is kind of meaningless coming from another party. It doesn't move your conversion rate up or down. It's helpful to think of these ideas, and I don't discount that value. But overall, this to me is not what conversion rate optimization is. So the lessons from this, the quick rant would be, one, don't trust bloggers. I would listen to people who have done the work and don't just write about it. Sometimes that's the same person, but not often. And then people misunderstand tactics and strategy and what the difference is. And then finally, most importantly, growth or CRO or experimentation, or whatever you're calling this decision-making process, I think it's pretty much all the same thing. It shouldn't be either. It shouldn't be a tactic. It shouldn't even be a strategy. It should be an operating system. And I'll get into what exactly that means. But first, the difference between strategy and tactics, we should kind of lay the groundwork here. Strategy is an overarching set of goals or plan. So it's like where you want to get, essentially. It's like the overarching kind of thing. And tactics are the specific actions or steps that you undertake to accomplish that strategy. So strategy would be kind of a level up from tactics. So let's give an example. If I'm a consultant and I want more business, I could have a strategy of basically getting more exposure and appearing as an expert to drive more like inbound lead flow to my like consulting business. Now, a tactic within that could be doing more speaking gigs like this. It could be blogging about my area of expertise. It could be starting on a podcast or going on podcasts. These are all tactics within the overarching plan or goal of becoming more known as an expert, right? And then an operating system is, technically speaking, the software that supports a computer's basic functionality. This is the basic kind of core operating system stuff, scheduling tasks, executing applications, controlling peripherals. And in our parlance, for what we're talking about with CRO and organizational operating systems, it's more so, if you want to think about it, like the underlying infrastructure or the rule book or the playbook that a company operates and makes decisions with. So an OS could be, all of your decisions are driven to cut costs. That could be an operating system. An operating system could be based on experimentation and data, which is where I'm going to go with this and what I think the role of CRO is. But anyway, it's sort of the rule book that implicitly or explicitly your whole company kind of operates by. So I think that the role of a CRO is less like the vigilante superhero ninja who comes in with their full skill set and toolbox of like everything you need to like optimize the shit out of a landing page, the copywriting skills, the A/B testing skills, the statistics knowledge, all of that, and comes in and just like converts the shit out of the customers, right? Like I don't think that's kind of the main thing. I think it's less like a vigilante and more like infrastructure. So it's more like roads and sewers and the boring stuff that kind of like builds a system in which like every individual and every team can operate and maximize their potential for brilliance and creativity. So it's the piping, it's the system by which you can travel and make things happen. That's what, to me, I think a CRO or experimentation program should look like. So this kind of comes in via, this is a blog post I read around the same time that I was kind of ideating this topic line and thinking about this talk. So this is from whole.io, and it's about how growth hacking is now growth engineering. So growth hacking, it kind of got adapted by marketers and kind of ruined, at least in the eyes of most of us. We think growth hacking is a little cheesy as a word. And now growth engineering is kind of the trend where it's this operational mix between like a technical marketer, so like growth-driven metrics, and like a developer. So it's basically like piping data and like being able to like apply like data in the right ways. Anyway, trend number 2 on this post that they wrote about was about growth is not marketing, it's operations. So instead of growth being something like copywriting or campaign building, like that's marketing, right? Like that's always going to be a thing in the company. At a certain point, we're going to need to write the email copy. We're going to need to like create the banner. That's going to be a function of marketing. Now, growth comes in via the operational component. So 100 years ago, Claude Hopkins wrote Scientific Advertising, sharing how to optimize results through testing and measuring stuff. In the 2000s, we got introduced cookie-based A/B testing. So like all of this was kind of like the increasing ability to apply the scientific method and data to our marketing processes. And that's the operational aspect. So that to me is growth. Now this post, first off, just real quick to give credit, this is by Ed Fry. So thank you, Ed, for your brilliance. Borrowing from it heavily. Thank you. And then the second piece of this is basically he asks, is growth about marketing or is it about enabling marketing? And then the question beyond marketing, which I think that's the real role of growth at CRO, right? So it's about enabling people to like do cool things and like actually like use data and run experiments for marketing and even improve operational efficiency and like customer support and improve sales processes and product stuff. So I think that's where our job really lies. So one more definition just to get past this stuff. CRO, in my words, is going to be a methodology used to make better decisions in an online environment and deliver better experiences to visitors, customers, users, etc. So this is a little bit expansive. Normally CRO is looked at as kind of like landing page optimization or based on the web browser, whereas growth is more like anecdotally about the product. So people are going to be focused on activation and monetization and product features. I think it's all kind of the same function. I think we're basically just using the scientific method or data-driven processes to make better decisions. So I think all of this CRO, experimentation, growth, it's kind of all the same thing. We're just applying it in different ways. So this is kind of the process for all of it. We take inputs, we take information, research, feedback, pipe that into some sort of process, which we call CRO, growth, experiments, whatever, optimization, and then output our better decisions and better experiences for our end users. And then within that, we can actually have a lot of different levers. So we can optimize the process. We can add different humans to the elements. We can, add more designers, more developers, more intelligent, whatever. We can tweak the human element. And then there's the tools and technology components, and of course, a little bit of magic, which is culture or kind of the softer underlying things that you can't necessarily point to in a company. But all of that's kind of the system that we're going to be talking about optimizing today. So CRO as a function, traditionally in a company is going to look one of two ways: centralized or decentralized. Centralized is going to be a center hub. It's going to be a traditional CRO team with a project manager, an analyst, a developer, a designer, etc. And they're going to run they're going to pipe through all the research. They're going to set up the Hotjar polls. They're going to do the GA analysis. They're going to prioritize the A/B tests, and they're going to run them. Everything's going to pipe through the centralized CRO team. The decentralized model is different. Everybody can run their own experiments. There's different pods working at different goals. So you might have like an activation team. You might have a PPC team. You might have an SEO team, and they're all running their own controlled experiments and kind of conversion rate optimization processes. But it's all decentralized, and there's no central hub kind of controlling things. The benefits, I think the pros and cons are a little bit obvious. In the centralized model, it's bottlenecked. So it's going to be a lot slower. It's going to be, a lot more approval. You're not going to necessarily be able to get to all different like islands. It's going to be centered, but it's probably going to be a little bit more rigorous and a little bit more homogenous, right? You have a centralized team kind of controlling the best practices and making sure the experiments are trustworthy. This is more common. It's definitely common in the enterprise, and it's definitely common in e-commerce. And the distributed model, I think the pros there are that you can move very fast, right? If you have a lot of teams wanting to run experiments, let them go. Democratize, right? Let everybody run tests and let everybody use data. The problem is not every team is as sophisticated as the others, and they're not all coming in with a data scientist or like an education in that field. So you might get some untrustworthy experiments, things might break. But I mean, this is more common in dev-heavy industries, and in my industry, in tech, it seems like this is really the model that most people run off of. So there's pros and cons, but I think the third model is the best. Spoiler. Center of excellence. So it's kind of a hybrid. In it, you do have a CRO team per se. They're more of an agency or a consultant, and they basically act as an empowering kind of tool. So they set up the technology, the testing tools, the data infrastructure, making sure that everybody can run tests and like do what they need to do. They help scale their knowledge. So they basically will go in and like help product teams or help marketing teams set up experimentation programs and like teach them about running frequent statistics analyses on their experiments, or teaching them how to set up Hotjar polls and analyze qualitative data. So there's an educational component as well. And sometimes there's even a service component where they'll come in and actually run experiments or do analysis and point to opportunity areas within like a product line or something like that. But in general, it's like an agency that helps you kind of enable and scale the rest of your company to run tests. So I think this is more and more common, particularly in the most sophisticated testing programs. So this is HP talking about their type of program, and the center of excellence would be when you have many teams running tests and it's decentralized. And talk about this as well with enabling and supporting individual teams and sharing the best practices that everybody's learned. And then this is one from IBM that they also shared at an Optimizely presentation, where like the last step in the lessons learned was that they needed a center of excellence to scale support for 5,000 marketers around the world. So essentially, when things get complicated and complex, when there's tons and tons of people running experiments, decentralized is great because you should democratize things. But building that infrastructure, the experiment platform, the knowledge sharing, the education, it's crucial for running controlled experiments, trustworthy controlled experiments at scale. So in my mind, with infrastructure, there's two things that we need to look into: the technical functionality, so the tooling, and the attitudes and beliefs, the culture. So the first piece would be the hard stuff, the code, the experiment platforms, the data. How are you actually, like, not physically, but how are you like tactically getting things done? And then the second piece is the culture. So it's like, how excited are the people in the program? How do people make decisions? How do they like look at decision making? Is there automatic response to run an experiment, or is it to just like do gut feel, the cultural underpinnings? So with technical stuff, we'll walk through each of these. But the first part would be the technical. So within that, I think there's three parts: data, operations, experiment capabilities, and knowledge sharing. So data is my favorite part. If you don't have the data and it's not trustworthy, you can't do much else. So the data operations includes collection, integration, accessibility, and trustworthiness. And I'm probably forgetting others, but this will do. The collection is easy, or simple. It's not easy. There's a million tools out there. Snowplow, it's the open source analytics, Google Analytics, kind of the industry gold standard at this point. Amplitude for product analytics, and you've got all sorts of qualitative ones too, like user testing, Qualaroo, et cetera, et cetera. Now, the interesting piece with this is there's so many tools out there nowadays that it's hard to integrate them all, which is why the rise of customer data platforms and CRMs and all this good stuff is coming up. But how do you take data from your product usage? How do you pipe that into a database and combine that with your pre-click marketing data and then your sales data and get like a centralized kind of like view of the customer? Data integration is very, very important. And then accessibility. So this is going to depend on how technical your team is, but do you have a bunch of SQL slingers in your company that can just go and write the SQL queries themselves? Do you need to build a business intelligence dashboard where people can actually access like the visualizations and the top level kind of reports? Or do you need like a productized analysis tool like Amplitude to give you the reports set up for you? There's no right answer, but it's basically being able to access the data that has been orchestrated properly. And then, of course, trustworthiness. If you can't trust the data, it's worthless. If your executives don't trust your numbers, I don't know. There's no real point in running the tests if there's going to be no trust. So it's always like a crucial thing to keep things. What's the thing? Measure twice, cut once. Yeah. So make sure everything's like in order all the time. Oh, and definitely make sure that you're running experiments properly, because as soon as somebody starts poking holes in like some of them and realizing that that it's a house of cards, then it will collapse. So it's really like important to keep these data trustworthiness best practices in mind when you're starting and running and scaling an experimentation program. And then the second piece, your experimentation capabilities. The CRO team or the growth team should be entirely in charge of what the hell you're doing in terms of how you're running and setting up experiments and analyzing them. And also the knowledge sharing, program management. So like, how are you like logging your experiments? Are you taking screenshots? Are you like tagging them properly? Can people find what tests you've run on a given landing page in the month of March? Or like what social proof tag tests, what ones have worked, what ones have failed? This is all really interesting stuff, especially as your company scales. Now, the second piece, attitudes and beliefs, I believe is just as crucial. You can easily get an experimentation platform like Optimizely. They actually have a program management tool within it, so you can actually like log all your tests and like write notes on your learnings. You can get analytics set up fairly easily. This isn't like incredibly complex stuff. The difficult thing is normally like the attitudes and beliefs and the culture. And I think the CRO team has a fundamental responsibility in evangelizing, educating, and supporting the company in their efforts. So evangelizing, there's a million articles on building a culture of experimentation. There's probably some talks today. It's all important shit, and it's really hard. So I think if you have like the top level of the C-suite bought in, it's a lot easier. But still, there's going to be like archaic kind of team setup. There's going to be archaic beliefs. There's going to be a lot of gut feel and ego. How can you and your team evangelize CRO and experimentation in your company and make people excited about running tests, not excited about, but okay with failing or setting up like innovative experiments that don't always win? How are you going to de-risk the experience of being wrong in a company? These are very important things. And again, there's no right answer, but it's something that the CRO team, I think, has the responsibility to think about. They're the company cheerleaders for experimentation. Education, equally as important, and I think it's part of evangelization. So when people go through a program and see the capabilities of running experiments and how much they can improve their jobs and improve their knowledge, I think it becomes obvious that they should do it. And then it's all about basically doing it the right way. So you can build out education programs, build out your internal wikis. So that's something I do quite a bit of, is write wikis at HubSpot, and also just blog posts on my own site. You can go to alexbirkett.com and read my A/B testing guidelines. But I've really invested a lot of time and effort into my career in terms of like educating and trying to provide guardrails and different like guidelines on running proper tests and doing survey analysis the right way and all that stuff. And then I think it's really underrated, but I think there's a lot of value in going to conferences like Conversion XL Live, CTA conference, doing stuff like this. So I think you should take advantage of all this stuff and take courses too. So of course, I'm biased, but the CXL Institute is probably the best way to just upload all of the knowledge from the best experts in the world into the brains of your team. So if you need Google Analytics courses, if you need SQL, if you need A/B testing, a place like CXL Institute has all of it. Otherwise, there's a million courses online that you can kind of patch together ad hoc. But I think doing all this is very, very important on an ongoing basis. And I think it's important that the organization encourages this from the top down, and it's not just something that the most ambitious people do on their own time. So again, education. There's companies like Airbnb that I think have done this in a revolutionary way. Everybody goes through data university. So essentially, there's no excuse not to know basic data analysis kind of things. So an example of this would be like in a big company, if you're using Google Analytics, everybody should know the difference between a page view, a session, and a user, and how sessions are calculated, right? Those are basic things. And I think if you're using data, if you consider yourself a data-informed, data-driven organization, people should know how to run a controlled experiment, or especially if they're running tests, right? Like when is it appropriate to stop an A/B test? When should you call it? What do you do if it's inconclusive? How many goals should you have? How do you correct for multiple comparisons? So all of these things are going to be fundamental things that you're going to run into when you're running tests. And if you don't understand them and you don't have a data scientist that can help you understand them, it's kind of, I don't know. Is it better to have no data or bad data, when you're making decisions? So education, massively important. Again, I already talked about CXL Institute, but there's so many resources out there. I would just encourage you to check some of these out. And then there's the supporting role of the CRO. So I talked a little bit about how they support product teams and marketing teams and actually provide services. I think there's a lot of ways to do this. So I saw this question in a group I'm in the CRO group. How is CRO considered in regards to marketing and or strategy? It's basically the question I've been asking. What is CRO? What is it? Is CRO considered as important as SEO, or is it an area that many feel is still for larger or more advanced shops or sites? My obvious answer is that they're completely different. There's no CRO versus SEO. Again, CRO is an operating system by which you can improve the decisions that you're making in terms of SEO. Same with PPC, same with everything else. So I think CRO is a guiding light for all teams, including SEO. There's no this or that. So I made this little graphic that kind of explains that. I think the CRO can pipe data and insights into all these different teams and help all of them out. And some of them can help each other out too, right? Like paid acquisition and SEO, their data can help each other. So it's like we can all work together. There's no this or that. But I think the CRO team underpins a lot of it, or the growth team, or whatever you want to call it, growth engineering. So CRO for SEO, some quick tactical examples that you can take away. Well, this is a quote from an article, actually, V9 Digital. And SEO is all about queries. They're going to be looking at keywords. So something like best form builder has a different intent than lawn care near me, lawn care in Austin, or restaurants near me, right? Like that would be like a local kind of thing. But there's all kinds of different like intents, right? Like something would be like, what is CRO? That's a different intent than CRO services. Maybe you're looking to buy versus like learn. So there's navigational queries, informational, transactional, but all of those affect conversion rate optimization. So a conversion optimizer must understand the intent of the user who's landing on the page to know what conversion action is most appropriate. If you're writing a blog post on what is conversion rate optimization, your services, or like a CTA for your services, is probably inappropriate. But an ebook that explains like maybe a CRO checklist or something, that's maybe a valid action to like promote for CRO purposes. Same thing if it's like somebody searching for best form builders, they're looking for a form builder. So maybe you shouldn't pitch an ebook on lead generation best practices. Maybe then it's time to actually like go for the sale. So knowing what information SEO or what information searchers are coming in with helps you optimize the page. And like CROs can help provide that information and make it more available to SEOs and like optimizers who are like setting up like the lead offers and like conversion points on the page. So this is a quick example with my site. So if I typed in Ahrefs, which is a really great tool, a blog post I wrote in like 2012, why you should read 50 books per year, I can look up all the keywords that people come into that page with. So reading 50 books a year, blah, blah, blah. But there's a bunch on how many books should I read in a year? That's a cool question, right? So I look into that and I'm like, man, could I create an offer like that? Could I, for the people who come into this page, instead of having some generic, like, try Alex Birkett's marketing software thing, maybe I could make something like how many books do the top entrepreneurs read in a year? Get the report to find out how many books Elon Musk, I spelled Buffett wrong, Warren Buffett, and more read per year. So that could be a really well optimized, really well aligned lead magnet. And that's kind of like the difference between, or that's the alignment between SEO and CRO. Similarly, if you're doing research in terms of conversion rate optimization, you're probably doing polls on these different pages. So you could ask like, what kind of topics would you like to see us write about? Sometimes you might even get ideas from like what people's pain points and questions are. And you could pipe that over to the blog team and be like, hey, look, like there's all these pain points here. And actually, side note, great blog post on this, Pain Point SEO from Grow and Convert talks all about this. So when you talk about like blog posts not being able to convert, it's often because you start high level with like the highest traffic keywords, when in actuality you should go for like the pain points that your customers are actually having before they reach your site and your solution. So this would be a fantastic way to pipe insights over to your blog and over to your SEO team if you're doing CRO. See, the data works both ways. It's all about like having that data in place, right, and integrating it and accessing it. Again, back to intent. So there's this whole thing with like how much intent a keyword has. So if it's like buy lawn care now, that's probably super high intent. If it's I don't know, customer satisfaction survey templates, somebody may be just like looking around for like ideas. They may be looking for a software, but it's a little bit lesser known. Something SEO teams can do in accordance with CRO teams is try to find some sort of tool or methodology for computing and predicting the intent of a given blog post or a page, because then you can align conversion rate offers much easier, even before you like see the conversion rates on them. So that's another example of what you could do if you're a supporting kind of CRO team with your SEO people. Paid campaigns, probably the most obvious. Most of the time I see paid teams like doing more sophisticated CRO teams than anybody, just because they have so much more data to work with and they have so much faster data collection. But here I thought this was an interesting webinar from Sear. It was basically how to prioritize your SEO work with your PPC data. So that's another thing that if you have a good CRO team, you can build those kind of like data pipelines to like have access to like that for the SEO and PPC teams. And then of course, if you're an CRO team, you can help the PPC team optimize their hundreds, thousands of landing pages and build like templatized pages and all that stuff and help them operationalize their testing at scale. CRO for email marketing. So having the data in place to do things like abandoned cart testing and personalization via email, wildly impactful. But it's all about having like the proper tagging and the proper events on page and having that accessible via your email marketing or email automation software. So this is a cool one I got from Society 6, where they basically showed me the shit I checked out on their website. So I was looking at, I don't know, like Pug shower curtains or something like that. And they showed me those items. I didn't even put them in my cart, and they just sent me an email with all the stuff that I had looked at. And then Pep Laya from CXL sent this automated email that was pretty cool. So I haven't been clicking on their emails in a while, I guess. And he gave me, it was, I thought, a great subject line first off. It's like, are you there? But they gave me an offer for a course just to re-engage me. So I thought that was kind of cool. They have all this data from their CRM and how many people are like clicking on their emails, how many people are coming to their site. Shows like an inactive period, and they're trying to like re-engage. So CRO insights can basically help everybody. So there's no reason in my mind to hoard this all and like have some sort of ninja like operating in the shadows, like optimizing landing pages without letting anybody else run their tests. We're all in the game of reducing uncertainty and making better decisions. So with each decision you make, there's a certain level of risk and there's a certain amount of certainty. If it's low risk and low certainty, do it. If it's high certainty, low risk, that's like lucky. You're going to get very few of those. But when it comes to decisions that are like either high risk and low certainty or high risk and high certainty, it's like you need experiments, or you need some sort of way to validate these decisions and use data for them. And like who's going to be the team, or who's going to be the person that helps evangelize that and helps build the infrastructure? I think that's the role of the CRO team. I don't think we should act as a bottleneck. I don't think we should try to close off the insights that we have. I think our job in CRO and growth should really be to enable everybody else who's interested, and even those who aren't interested, we should get them interested. Because the more people you have who are like intelligently running experiments, the more people who have that empowerment to be able to do so without impacting like other things that are going on, without like running interactive tests that like mess with each other, right? So as long as everything doesn't harm anything else, we should empower everybody to run experiments and everybody to use data, because a data-driven organization is what's going to win in this competitive atmosphere we have now. So I think that's the role of CRO. And this is a picture of democracy, which they all just kind of brought. When I searched democracy into Unsplash, it's all protests. So I thought there was going to be maybe something a little bit different. So democracy, our job is to democratize experimentation and growth. If you want to get in touch with me, alexbirkett.com, that's where I write. I'm probably going to try to write a post on this. We'll see how much time I have. I'd love to expound upon this, or just chat with you if you have time and want to. On Twitter, I am Alex Birkett. LinkedIn, you can email me too. It's like Alex A. Birkett at HubSpot.com. And then you could fill out a 2-question survey, and I'll send one person who does so one of my favorite books. I'll just pick them at random. So thank you, and let's democratize experimentation.